Hey, I'm Hunt, and this is Hunt on LSU, your channel for LSU Fighting Tiger football talk. Enjoy the video. We want you to leave a comment below, hit that like button, and subscribe right below the video. Enjoy. College football preseason magazine season, and I will still personally go purchase the hard copies. I like to have the hard copies. Our whole family hangs out at Falls River on the 4th of July. I will have the hard copies out there, just getting some sun and reading some magazines, kind of getting prepped for football. But you can also find some of the information online as well, and that's something we're going to dive into over the next few weeks too. And one of the things that I got to today online was the Athlon preseason college football bowl projections. Now, I realize that you can take these with a grain of salt, because we don't really know anything about what's going to go on from Labor Day through Christmas. But there are some aspects of this that are new because the playoff is new, and I think it paints an interesting picture of what you're really competing against. So we'll start with LSU. Where does Athlon have LSU? Well, they've got LSU pegged to go to the Gator Bowl.
Come on.
And that doesn't excite anybody. I get it. But let me go a little bit further. Gator Bowl against Miami, that used to be a reasonable thing. Back 20 years ago, you go 9-3, you make the Gator Bowl against Miami. Like, okay, that's not bad. The weather's good over there. Miami's a perennial, big name program. You might just skip over there for New Year's Day. Like, that'd be a nice finish to the season 20 years ago.
Yes.
Now it's a mitigated disaster. It's just awful. But let me go a little bit further and peel back this onion. We know that the top-rated SEC team that is not in the playoff goes to the Citrus Bowl. And the Citrus Bowl in this ranking has Missouri against Iowa. I believe in this ranking, it has Missouri and LSU as the top two SEC teams that don't make the college football playoff. That's what this reads like to me. Now, you realize that the Citrus Bowl does have that spot, and then the SEC works to assign some other things, so you can't take it literally, but I can basically infer that's what they're telling me. So the question is, how many SEC teams are above LSU and Missouri that do make the playoff, and then what does that need to look like? They've got the college football playoff projections, and they've got the 1 seed is Georgia, the 2 seed Ohio State, the 3 seed Florida State, and the 4 seed Utah. That's your SEC champ in Georgia, your Big Ten champ in Ohio State, your ACC champ in Florida, and Utah, I believe, is in the Big 12. I think that sounds right to me. So that's your top 4. It's got 1 SEC team in it. Then you go 5 through 12, and you've got Oregon, Texas, another SEC team, so that's a second. Ole Miss, another SEC team, that's a third. Bama, another SEC team, that's a 4th. That's 6, 7, 8 in the rankings. And then you've got Michigan, Liberty, best group of 5 team, Notre Dame, and Penn State. That's what you're looking at with this top 12. It has 4 SEC teams in it. For my entire life, I've looked at this and said, you better win the SEC to have a chance to win a national championship. That was certainly the case in the BCS era until we got to that fateful day when Bama got in over Oklahoma State. But Tennessee was the best team in 2001, and LSU beat them in the SEC championship team. You're out. Well, that was how this thing was structured. You had to win the Southeastern Conference. Certainly before, the BCS, when we had everybody playing in their own bowl games, you needed to win your conference. And then we got to a 4-team playoff, and you could see a scenario where you didn't win your conference and got in. It certainly happened in a 4-team playoff. You had to be in the SEC. But you really needed to go 11-1 or 12-0 to have any chance. And we know that now that's not the case. Now, you really just need to go 10-2, maybe 9-3, and get into the top 4 of the SEC. Now, it's a 16-team league, so there's a lot of teams fighting for that. But it totally, in my mind, changes our viewpoint on what we're looking at in the middle of the summer and as we creep towards August and get closer to Labor Day. I had to frame my entire thought on the season of, can they really go 11-1? Like, is that possible? And most of the time, when I sat there on Labor Day and said, can they go 11-1? My answer was no. And that's not real comfortable. Y'all know how I feel about that. I'm trying to win championships, and I realize how difficult that's going to be. And it almost kind of dampens my long-term view because I realize how long a tightrope wire you have to walk to get there. And I'll contrast that with baseball, where this past year, LSU stunk on ice for 5 weeks. And if that happens in football, turn out the lights. When's basketball season? When's baseball practice happening? What's the recruiting class look like? Who are we going to fire? What coach is out of here? Like, that's what it turns into if you have a bad few weeks. I don't like that. I like the fact that baseball was terrible for 5 weeks, and then when Memorial Day rolled around, we're going, oh my God, they figured it out. They got a chance. And now we can do that in football. And LSU didn't make it happen because they made their road too difficult. And if you do have 2 bad weeks in October, you may have to go play Ohio State and Columbus. Tough break. That's what you got to do. And that's what happened to LSU baseball this year. But you could also be Ole Miss from 3 years ago in baseball, get hot, and there you go. Now we're running. Matt gave the example on After Further Review yesterday about the 2001 team. They had a bad month. By the time that thing rolled around, and Rohan Davey, Josh Reed, Robert Royal were throwing that thing all over the place, like they were a handful. And Illinois found out about it. And I don't think they would have beat Miami, but they'd have been a force late in the season. And now we can start to talk about that. I don't have to go 11-1. I'm in a war down the stretch based on this projection with Bama, with Texas, and with Ole Miss. That's who I'm fighting. And if one of them drops down, like 12 teams have to go. And I don't think they're going to dig too deep into the Big 12. I don't think the 4 seed in the ACC is getting there. Only the Big 10 and the SEC have this wiggle room, in my estimation. Now, every year is going to be different. But you really just need to kind of get in the top 4. And in this bowl projection, LSU doesn't. They probably finish 6th, which probably tells me they win 8-4. And 8-4 is not going to be good enough. But 9-3 might be, and 10-2 is. And for those that would look at this and say, well, I don't want to, you shouldn't be able to lose 2 games. Like this is college football is the best regular season we got. I go, well, if you really want to fight and 10-2 is not good enough, we'll go 11-1 and 12-0. You get a bye. You don't have to worry about playing that extra game on campus. So it is still interesting. This to me is awesome, and it completely changes the prism with which I view it. In the BCS era, if LSU goes to Vegas and loses to USC, you can just about turn out those lights. Not 100%, but just about. In this 12-team playoff era, you lose to USC, all right, you actually have more wiggle room. You can still go to College Station and lose. You can still have Ole Miss come in here and beat you. You can still have Alabama come in here and beat you. And you can still be okay as long as you play the rest of them well. I think that's better. It's more interesting. It's more to talk about. We've sat here through a couple of terrible seasons 3 and 4 years ago. There's nothing to talk about halfway through except who they're firing. I don't want to do that. Let's talk about football. Let's find a way to right the ship. What can they get better at? And if they're playing great and they're undefeated and they're 8-0, you better get that bye. What are we going to? How are they going to get a bye? Who are they fighting with for that? Can they lose a game and still keep the bye? It's just more interesting. This is better. And I know there are a lot of people that say, I don't want Liberty playing for a national championship as the 12 seed in the playoff. I don't mean in the final. I don't need a 3-loss Penn State sneaking in the back end. I just disagree. Give me the more intrigue. And in this situation, you're going to have a first round where Alabama plays at Michigan. How is that not awesome? Texas plays at Notre Dame. How is that not awesome? Ole Miss goes to Penn State. Might white that thing out in December. You're going to have Lane Kiffin freezing cold. bunch of Mississippi boys going up there to play in a whiteout in December when it's 11 degrees in Happy Valley. That's awesome. And in this situation, they actually played that round out. And you've got Georgia, Bama in the Sugar Bowl, Utah, Oregon in the Fiesta Bowl, Florida State, Texas in the Peach Bowl, Ohio State and Ole Miss in the Rose Bowl. Give me all of it. I can't imagine thinking this is a bad thing. Now, a bad thing is LSU actually showing up and playing in the Gator Bowl. I don't want that. But let's try to avoid it and get into this really awesome playoff. I'm more excited about the future of college football than I am about what I saw in the past. I think it's going to be more interesting. I think it's going to be more engaging. And I'm all for it. So, no, I don't think that reading these college football bowl projections on June the 27th is gospel. But I do think what is set in stone for me is that this is more interesting. Take your thoughts on it. Hey, thanks for watching Hunt on LSU. Before you get out of here, do us a couple of favors. Hit that like button, leave your comments below, and subscribe to the channel for all your Fighting Tiger football talk. See you next time.